Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into things today by looking at a very famous, honestly pretty serene biblical promise about finding wisdom. Now, if you've spent any time at all around Christian theology, you've probably heard people talk about how God just hands out guidance to absolutely anyone who asks for it. But is that actually true? Today, we're looking at the real qualifications for receiving that spiritual wisdom. We'll be walking through a really fascinating analysis by Pastor Husey Kyung, who is unpacking the deep analytical writings of John MacArthur. And as you'll see, we're going to take this from some super high-level theology straight down into the incredibly messy, totally unforgiving reality of our everyday lives. So listen to this quote. "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you." You probably recognize that from Matthew chapter 7. On the surface, man, that sounds like the ultimate universal promise, right? It's practically a spiritual blank check. You just ask and boom, the universe hands it over. But when we actually dig into the source material, specifically John MacArthur's deep dive into the context here, we find out there are actually a few hidden caveats. It turns out God isn't exactly a cosmic vending machine where you just drop in a quick prayer and out pops perfect wisdom. And this is where the theological framework gets really interesting, because God's wisdom isn't just tossed around indiscriminately to anybody walking down the street. It actually requires the person seeking it to meet some very specific spiritual criteria. It's kind of like the fine print of the promise. When the text says everyone who asks, in its original context, it's specifically talking about people who already belong to the Heavenly Father. It implies you already have this trusting relationship built up. So right out of the gate, we're seeing that there are real boundaries to this seemingly limitless grace. Okay, let's just quickly walk through these 5 specific conditions. First up, you have to be a child of God. I mean, you can't really ask him for a family inheritance of wisdom if you aren't in the family, right? Second is obedience. It's a two-way street built on respect. We receive because we obey. Third, right motives. Asking just out of pure selfishness? Yeah, that gets you literally nowhere. Your intentions absolutely matter here. Fourth is submission to his will. You can't be double-minded, trying to serve both God and your own worldly ambitions and still expect perfect clarity. And fifth, and this one is super fascinating, persistence. In the original Greek, the command to ask, seek, and knock literally implies continuous action. It means keep asking, keep knocking. It's an ongoing, relentless pursuit, not just throwing up a Hail Mary when you're in a tight spot. Well, here's where we hit a bit of a wall. Because, let's be honest, those lofty spiritual ideals, perfect obedience, completely pure motives, they look amazing in a theology textbook. But out here, in the real world, none of us are hitting those marks perfectly all the time. We live in a gritty reality where loyalty gets tested constantly, relationships are insanely complicated, and grace, the exact thing we're asking God for, is usually in really short supply when we're dealing with each other. 60 million. Specifically, 60 million new Taiwan dollars. Just let that massive number sink in for a second. This figure is actually at the center of a recent moral dilemma from Taiwanese news, and it is the perfect, jarring example of what happens when we totally fail to show the grace we want from above. We're leaving theoretical theology behind right now. This is a look at what happens when human pride and legalism completely take the wheel. So let's look at the cold, legal reality of this political and medical marriage breakdown. A wife legally gifts a medical clinic valued at 60 million NTD to her doctor husband. It's a huge gesture. Maybe it was a tax thing, or maybe it was just genuine love and partnership. But fast forward, and things go completely sour. They go through a really bitter divorce. And the legal outcome? Utterly brutal. Because it was officially a gift, the ex-husband walks away with this multi-million-dollar clinic completely free and clear. But that massive loan, the crippling debt from buying it, the ex-wife is legally stuck with the whole thing. A gesture of love literally turned into an inescapable $60 million trap. It's just a stunning example of how fast human affection can weaponize into total legalistic cruelty. But you know what? Bad behavior definitely isn't just for millionaires. Let's pivot to a completely different story. A church member recently went to their pastor with the most bizarre situation. They had a friend, a so-called best friend, who gave them a gift 5 whole years ago. Not a clinic, just some random everyday item they didn't even really want in the first place. Well, they recently had a falling out. And how did this former friend react? They aggressively demanded this 5-year-old gift be returned to them within 24 hours. No way, right? It's completely absurd. Luckily, the person just dug the dusty thing out of a closet, bagged it up, and told them to come get it. Now, when we put these two stories side by side, it's pretty wild. On the one hand, you've got this massive, life-ruining 60 million NTD legal trap. On the other, a petty, almost laughable demand for a useless old trinket. But look closely, they're the exact same thing. It perfectly illustrates our core theme here: human bitterness, broken loyalty, and this aggressive urge to just take back our grace. It happens at absolutely every scale of life. When we feel slighted, our gut instinct is to retaliate, balance the scales, and make the other person pay. And that brings us to a really stark contrast, pulling us right back to our spiritual framework. Think about how fickle we are. We give something away, and 3 years later our ego gets bruised, so we demand it back. But look at MacArthur's analysis of God's nature. When God forgives us or gives us breath or grace or wisdom, he doesn't suddenly demand a refund the minute we mess up again. He operates with this permanent, steadfast faithfulness that honestly just puts our human stinginess and scorekeeping to shame. Which leads me to a pretty direct question I want you to ask yourself right now. When you refuse to forgive, who really suffers? I know we all have moments where we feel 100% justified in holding a grudge. Someone did us wrong, we want fairness, and we want them to feel the weight of it. But practically speaking, when you hold on to that resentment, what is actually happening to you? There's this amazing quote that hits the nail on the head. Unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. The source material points out how incredibly stubborn we can be. We lock ourselves in this mental prison, drinking this slow-acting poison of bitterness every day, somehow tricking ourselves into believing it's punishing the person who hurt us. But actually, they're probably just out there living their lives. It's entirely a self-inflicted wound. You're literally just destroying your own peace and totally blocking your own ability to receive that spiritual wisdom we've been talking about. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final thought. Are you going to choose wisdom, or are you going to choose poison this weekend? As you go about your life, interacting with your family, your neighbors, your coworkers, you're going to run into friction. People are going to let you down. Heck, someone might even ask for a 5-year-old gift back. But true spiritual wisdom, the kind that requires right motives and submission, demands that we act with a forgiving heart. Because we've been given that free, unbreakable grace, we are called to extend it to the messy people around us. So don't drink the poison, guys. Choose the wisdom of grace. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it gives you something really profound to chew on over the weekend.